Sonic Movie Show is a weekly show that you can find on a variety of podcast services. Keep up with us by following our Twitter at Sonic Movie Show. What's up, Sonic movie fans? Welcome to the 72nd episode of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show that's about Sonic news, and Sonic movie news. And 50 episodes later, from our Part 2 review of the Sonic movie, we're finally doing Part 3, I guess. We watched the Sonic the Hedgehog movie for the third time in our lives, 1 year later. My name is Ethan. With me, as always, is Devin.
Excusez-moi, monsieur.
I remember that line.
Yeah.
There's also a random part in the movie where he just says in another language, "incredible."
Yeah, I don't remember what it is. Yeah, I think it was like Italian or something. Yeah.
I think the fuse blows or something. But yeah, so we're the Sonic Movie Show. We started this podcast as a joke, kind of, about can we do a podcast all about the Sonic movie?
Kinda.
For 20 episodes in a row, we did the Sonic movie just gambit. We tried to make up any reason to make an episode tied to something new about the movie. We did a review of the movie on episode 21. 2 days later, we went back and saw it again and re-reviewed it for our 22nd episode, our part 2. I have not seen this movie since. I know you have not seen this movie since.
No.
We're back. We just saw it today and yesterday. Has anything changed? I don't know how we start this. We're not going to recap the movie.
No,
you've seen it by now. If you even you saw the title of this podcast, you've seen the movie by now. And I guess it goes without saying there's going to be spoilers. So
yeah, Eggman dies at the end. Sorry to burst your bubble if you just tuned in and I ruined it for you. Sorry. No, I feel like we should just try to put it under a scope of, okay, it's been 1 year since we've both saw this film, since it was in theaters, and I think we need to, I guess, kind of talk about first, what did we initially think, in a quick synopsis of how we initially felt about the movie a year ago. So basically what we did in those 4 hours of recording and a quick 5-minute thing, and then do we go back and say, do we agree with this? Do we disagree with this? Is there things you like more now? Is there things you dislike more? Is there things you love? Are there things you hate? I think we should also talk about how this is the first time we both have seen it in a non-movie theater setting where there isn't other people. I think that changes your opinion on things. It's like watching stand-up comedy on Netflix or watching stand-up comedy in a bar full of other people who are having a good time, for example. I think there is a difference there, so I think we should keep that in mind. And obviously, like I said, 1 year later, we've watched other movies from now. Maybe our just opinions have changed overall. Maybe this movie's trash now. I don't know. But I think that's where we should start is how did we feel initially? I remember when we first saw this movie. First 2 times we saw this movie.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go?
You go.
Okay. If I remember correctly, 1 year ago watching this movie, I think both times I was in agreement. I don't think my opinions changed 2 days later. I obviously thought the movie was fun. Obviously thought the movie was better than to be expected. I saw the movie more times than I saw Detective Pikachu, which was a whopping 1 time. So I don't know if back then I liked it more than Pikachu or not. I don't even know if I had that opinion
that was a discussion
at the time.
We had. We kind of both went back and forth on it.
But I guess I would vote Sonic because it's the 3rd time I've seen this movie. I liked it a lot. I was a bit disappointed, I believe, at the fact that there was, in quotes, nothing to do with the video games besides just here's the core idea of the 2 characters, Sonic and Robotnik, or Sonic and Eggman, you know what I mean? Besides that, they just, in quotes, shoehorned, but not really, there was thoughts, try to make it into a mainstream audience, has no idea about the games, or the cartoons, or anything else, do the classic thing of, these classic cartoon characters are in our world type of stuff, which we had predicted for a while might be the case, and I thought they did a solid job back then. So today, having seen the movie for the third time now, 1 year later, I realized, and I kind of already knew this, but this really cemented to me. I don't really like watching movies I've already seen unless it's been years. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, Devin, and folks out there. I did not want to see this movie again. I'm like, I was kind of like, I gotta like watch the movie. I'd rather like play a video game or something.
You'd rather play
Obviously,
Sonic.
I mean, yes, I need a platinum Sonic Unleashed. But watching the movie for the third time now, I forgot a whole bunch of random little things, random Jim Carrey quotes, how weird the opening was with the owl and all that stuff, and how completely like separate from any Sonic canon at all. And I don't think I stated this well enough back in the day when we did our review on it, because I know I thought very similarly about this. You know, brand new character, brand new idea for how they're putting this character in the real world. You have him on a different planet or whatever. It still feels very much like a half-assed job of like, we just need to start this going. It almost feels like that was an idea they did very late. And I remember back in the day when we were doing it, somewhere in our 20 episode run leading up to the movie, we were like, oh, Baby Sonic's a thing because perhaps Baby Yoda back in that Star Wars show.
We don't really
Maybe
know.
That was late.
Yeah.
Did they do this idea after they already decided they were going to redesign the character because of the backlash?
They actually based it off Baby Peanut, actually. It wasn't Baby Yoda.
Exactly. Now he's
adult.
Whatever.
He's an adult peanut man.
Is this just back to normal?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they
Regardless,
realized how shitty that campaign was.
Well, I mean, then 2020 happened. And we're like, we have better things to worry about than like crying tears over a brand.
There was a correlation, maybe, between Baby Peanut being announced at the Super Bowl and the pandemic happening a month later. Perhaps.
Regardless, I think we believed that they decided to do that section of the film, that opening, after the film was supposed to come out, or at least when they were supposed to be done with the whole thing. Very late edition. And it shows to me. It really does feel like a huge afterthought. Longclaw is mentioned once before Sonic and Tom meet up when he's like, he needs the rings. That's besides that. And then one time later when it's just like a random mention about, oh, was she right, or something like that. Something like that, right? They will never mention that character again in the sequel. I guarantee that. The whole thing felt just like, we didn't have enough of actual Sonic's world, so let's just do this. To me, that's what it felt like. But for the rest of the movie, nothing else I don't think that I've already mentioned in the past two times we talked about this. Just my appreciation for it has grown a bit. But at the same time, I also look at this a lot like someone that has no idea what Sonic is besides, you know, he's a blue hedgehog that runs fast. You know, just like anyone's like, I don't know Mickey Mouse's lore. I know him and his friends. Goofy's the stupid one. Besides that stuff, right? Anyone seeing this movie would probably be like, eh. And to me, that almost feels like a bit of a disappointment that there isn't a bit more of like trying to be something that, you know, more about the world. Detective Pikachu did that. If someone doesn't like Detective Pikachu, at least it wasn't misrepresenting what Pokemon is for the most part. Someone can easily think Sonic's, you know, video games and all that stuff are like, he is an alien that came to Earth kind of a thing. You know what I mean? But overall, I mean, I don't dislike the movie, and I haven't soured on it over 1 year later, which I thought I was. I'm not going to lie to you. I was half expecting to like not like this movie and have to hide it for the sake of the podcast, but at least I still like the movie. So what about you? What have you thought about this movie back in the day?
Well, I think initially I thought this movie was, for a video game movie, which was a pretty lower bar, I think. Grant, we haven't seen every video game movie. We're in the process of trying to do that.
That's the other thing too. I don't think this affected me, but maybe it's affected you. We hadn't seen every single video game movie back in the day. We've seen a lot less than we do now. We did this initiative where we're starting to re-review or like watch video game movies and, you know, review them, spanning different eras of filmmaking. And
seeing
I
different
think
techniques
that
of how are they getting this, how are they taking from the source material.
It's easier to see how low the bar was.
Yeah,
for Sonic.
Yeah, after watching like two Tomb Raider films, I'm like, and I remember saying this when we think we did our first review of this and the second, was that like I'm happy that this movie was good. And I'll say that I think this movie is good. I don't think it's great or like life changing necessarily. Maybe for us because we do a podcast about it. I guess in a way it is life changing in that regard. But I think this movie's good. And then compared to other video game movies, I think if it rests to other films that I've seen, it's all right. It has funny moments. I think this is a movie if I had kids, I would throw it on for them. And if we're eating dinner together, we watch it and they laugh and I laugh because there's some humor in there that I think is fun enough. There's some knee slappers in there. Actually, for myself, I think laughing or at least enjoying it actually more this time around though. Even though knowing all the jokes, there's some things that like I noticed this time around that I didn't see before. Just like small stuff or like I think the execution at some points were actually better watching it. I think in a setting where I can hear everything and have the time to visualize everything and not as many distractions as in a movie theater. But there's also some moments where I'm like, oh, actually, I don't like this scene at all. I think this should have been reshot. Yeah, I had those opinions the first two times, which I think this movie is good. I think honestly is probably one of the best video game movies because of how good it is. And I think it kind of gives a recipe. This and Detective Pikachu both give two different types of recipes of what you can do in a video game movie and what direction you can take it in. And I think after watching all the video game movies we watched in the last year and seeing this like third time, I'm going to stand by that and say that like what Sonic did here, or what they did with Sonic here was perfect. I think for future films to bounce off of. Like the Mario movie could easily be like, hey, let's look what they did with Sonic and like work from there. You know, we don't have to change anything. Like,
yeah, we don't know anything about that movie besides it's being animated by the Minion Studio.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, and they have a lot of experience making children's movies, but they still doesn't mean they can't take into account, hey, like people loved Sonic, people loved Detective Pikachu. What did they do in these films that people loved? What things did people do that they didn't like, so that we can try to fix that?
Actually, I do want to quick mention all of the video game movies we've seen since seeing this movie. So prior, we had already seen Detective Pikachu, but after seeing this Sonic the Hedgehog movie, we watched the Mortal Kombat movie, the first Resident Evil movie, the first Lara Croft Tomb Raider movie, our favorite film of all time, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Then, opposite of the quality scale, we watched Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, then the first Silent Hill film, then the second Resident Evil film, Resident Evil Apocalypse. Then in January, we put out a back-to-back of Assassin's Creed and Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, the second Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movie. So through that list, I can easily put through maybe setting Detective Pikachu aside because I don't really want to go through the mental state of comparing the two and fighting which one I think is better. I would put Sonic the Hedgehog at the top of that list.
100%.
Easily.
Yeah, it's not even like I liked Prince of Persia, but it was so much more a just action adventure film that I feel like I've seen before, and they played it almost too safe. Where I think Sonic played it generally safe, but they also just did things differently from those films. Where
and all these films, they span different eras. We have stuff from the early 90s, and we have stuff from the past 5 years. What was Assassin's Creed was like, what, 2017? 2016?
Yeah.
2016, right? Yeah, so 5 years ago. We have a huge span of stuff. So we have modern Disney takes on things with Prince of Persia, and we have very old school, I don't know, whatever you would call Mortal Kombat. You know what I mean? There is so many different ranges. I wouldn't call it art. I would call it content, like Martin Scorsese
exactly
hates.
He knows.
So I do think that, too, like, we have now had the experience of seeing, like, it's easy to say, oh, yes, just like how superhero movies sucked forever, and then, I guess whoever Paramount had, commissioned or hired to make that first Iron Man movie back in the day, they nailed the formula, right? So it's easy to just assume that happened with Sonic and Detective Pikachu, but we now have evidence, at least in our opinions, that, yes, they got better over time. They somehow kind of found ways to make it work, even though they're different, Pikachu and Sonic. There's ways to make them work.
I think I said this last year. I still think there needs to be like obviously we haven't watched Monster Hunter yet, but I don't know if I want to put it in this category of these A tier video games people know. Like not every person knows Monster Hunter, right? Not every
In
person,
America.
In America. So I guess yes, I will say this is from an American lens.
Right. Japan loves Monster Hunter. We didn't get like
we
half
know
the
Pokemon.
games, but you're right.
The general like if we go to anybody on the street and says what's Pokemon, they'll be able to describe it. If you go to everyone in the street and say what's Sonic, they probably will still know some blue hedgehog thing. I don't know much about it, but I know he go fast. Like because of good marketing over the years, and we talked about that in our first Sonic game review. And I think that I think Mario is the next one where we need to see if Mario does a great job. Then I think we're in the start of or remember like you said, Iron Man. Even Iron Man saw Incredible Hulk that was, but like they were going somewhere with it. They're still building off of Iron Man, and then we wound up getting a couple more bad Marvel movies. But it wasn't. But I think this is the start of where Marvel was at with their movies. I feel like
see that.
we have Mortal Kombat coming up. That's another kind of bigger
I actually have
thing.
a list.
Yeah, go ahead.
To give a quick list, these are the ones that have either dates or years. Mortal Kombat is April 16th. The Uncharted film, I believe, is next year. That's right. Jeez. Because I have down here July 16th. That's wrong. I need to change that. Tomb Raider 2 is indefinitely delayed. Resident Evil, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is April 8th, 2022.
Something like that.
Super Mario is 2022. But then there's other movies that don't have any dates. They're just announced. Borderlands, which has gotten a lot of news. Detective Pikachu 2, Dynasty Warriors, Five Nights at Freddy's, Gears of War, Just Cause, Just Dance, Mega Man, Metal Gear Solid, which I think has an actual actor with Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I put that more in like that's probably happening.
There's
some
a
of
Minecraft
those that you
movie.
listed, I don't think are actually happening.
Yeah.
Like Five Nights at Freddy's, I've heard that for
I don't want that to
years.
happen, but
I've heard
that's
Five Nights
not
at Freddy's
fair.
for 5 years, so I don't.
I mean, I've heard Metal Gear Solid film since 2010.
But the fact that they have an actor confirmed and the director has been pretty open.
And
about
there's a
doing
couple others. There's a Space Invaders movie, which is probably going to be like that fucking Pixels movie starring Adam Sandler.
Oh, Battleship.
There's a Yakuza movie, and there's a Saints Row movie, and there's a Sims movie. A lot of those, they're probably going to float in the ether until some script is liked by an executive, and there's money, and there's a window of time. But like the ones that we know are going to happen that have those dates, and then plus I would add the Borderlands movie, Detective Pikachu 2, because that's obviously going to happen, Metal Gear Solid, and I would assume Minecraft will be forced to happen, regardless of if anyone wants to make that. It's going to be forced to happen. Through those are big, obviously, titles. Those are movies that have to either, make their way like the Iron Man to Iron Man 2 to Thor, Captain America. There's a quality bar. They go up and up and up and up and up. In that sense, whereas a lot of the other movies are probably might be bad, just my opinions based off a judgment that I don't really have any facts for. You're right, though. There is a huge chance that the Borderlands movie is going to be good because they kind of need it to, and there's a bit more of we can't slapdash out and just fund an Assassin's Creed movie. We got him because we know it can make money. Pikachu and Sonic made money. I think that alone will force the next wave of movies to be good, is because they'll just spend the money to do revisions. They'll spend the money to do reanimations.
The fact that, once again, we go back to this, when they said they were going to redo the design, that was at the time, I still think it is, at this time, something pretty unheard of. Like we've seen the Justice League being redone, basically, right? But prior to like Sonic, I really can never think of like an example where they're like, "Yep, we're gonna basically reanimate this entire film."
Right.
Like, that showed right away that they're like, "No, we want this to be good." And I think this is a huge speculation, no proof to it, no evidence, so it could just be bullshit. But I honestly think with how good Detective Pikachu was and how much money it made, that when Sonic's trailer dropped and there was all that negative response to it, that they're like, you know what? Instead of us just riding and dying this, let's actually take the time, do this well, because we think this movie's actually good, like Detective Pikachu, and we can make just as much money. And in fact, Sonic the Hedgehog made more money than Detective Pikachu, right?
The last time, let me Google that. Because last time I wrote down a statistic was it did not.
Or it was
Sonic.
close. I just remember it. Regardless, Sonic was one of the best video game gross video game movies of all time. But
306 million versus versus 433. Pikachu made 433 million.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't remember.
But they are still like at the top. They're in like the top 3.
Yeah,
essentially.
But I think that shows that once there's it's showing that there's an audience at least for video game movies, or it could just be there's an audience for Sonic and Pokemon. That easily could be it too. But I think if we continue to get good video game movies, that will change. How many people were probably like, I don't care about Captain America, like the average person, and now you talk to people after all the Avengers films are like, oh hell yeah, I love Captain America. I've never read a comic book in my life, but hell yeah, Captain America, right?
Exactly.
Video games have the potential to do that, but I still think the verdict is out of whether or not they can do that, because I think they need a third out of like the next 4 movies you said. They need a third one in there. I think that really needs to do well in the box office and also needs to be good, I think.
The ones that have years or dates attached to them, which is, again, the Mortal Kombat movie coming out in April. Trailer makes that movie look like it's not going to be complete dog shit, so I think that has a potential to do well. The Uncharted movie, Tomb Raider 2, whatever, Resident Evil, Sonic 2, and Super Mario. Besides Sonic and Mario, which Mario will do well just because it's Mario, and Sonic will do well because the first movie was good. Uncharted will be the one that will do the best.
That's why I'd put my cards on,
and it needs to be good.
And if it's trash, then I'd be a little like, that's what I'm saying, like, at least if one out of these like 4 movies you just said are good, like I'm saying like critically acclaimed good, like I know Sonic still got probably like a 50 on Rotten Tomatoes, but compared to other movies, that is like a 10 out of 10 compared to them. So I don't want to go on this too long because I know we want to talk more about the movie itself, but I think 1 year later, I still think that is still true, that this movie, if 10 years from now, video game movies are the next big thing, or are the big thing, we can point to Sonic the Hedgehog, I think, being one of the reasons for that, 100%, and influencing other films to do a good job. And it also puts pressure on Sonic 2 to be good, in my opinion. Or if anything, better than this first one, because now they see what works and what doesn't, and now all the time they spent on redoing the animation, they actually could spend more time maybe making a bigger story, a wider world. Because that was my one critique I still have of this film, is that I think it's, at moments, a little too small. I do like, generally, though, the plot of, like, it's constantly moving from one location to the other, and then it goes right back to where it all started, kind of.
Yeah.
But
that is a good jumping off point, because budget, what was the budget on this movie?
I want to say it was 130 or something, 140, if I remember correctly. I think
By the way,
range.
Pikachu's tomato meter says 68%, Sonic is 63%.
Okay, a little higher than I actually thought for both, because I feel like Rotten Tomatoes is super, like, it's either you get like a 90 or up, or it's like you're a 40. So I feel like that's how it always goes.
It's also not like a grading. It's simply taking into account, does a critic suggest you see the movie or not?
And
not
critics
like
don't care usually for these.
Right. I could say, go see this movie. It's a 2 out of 5, but go see it. It's it's worth seeing because it's interesting. That counts. Budget of $85 million. But this was perhaps before
the redone. I thought it was 130 or something like that. It had a low budget for overall, from what I remember.
Regardless, though, that is not a Marvel movie budget. Right?
Not talking 500 mil here. Since
this movie made $306 million, they can increase the budget, because even if they make, at least this is my opinion of the matter, even if the sequel to the movie does $200 million, if their budget, let's say, went from 85 to 150, right, which is a huge jump, but like then they could do so many crazy things, like introduce lots of new characters and locations. Even if it doesn't, it only makes $200 million, which is a huge step down, because it's Sonic the Hedgehog, because this is a character that has merchandise, they can merchandise the fuck out of the second movie and make a whole bunch of movie. I haven't we did an episode. I think it was like our penultimate episode to a review of this movie back in the day was Sonic the Hedgehog movie merchandise, and there was nothing. Because what do? Here's a San Francisco set. Here's Sonic.
Eggman action figure, maybe?
Maybe. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you can really merchandise besides posters and the same PNGs of Sonic and the poses he's got, right? If they do a sequel, they are 100% going to go to wacky locations. Going to have Sonic, clearly Tails, obviously.
Funko Pops
maybe
out the gahoo.
100%.
Yeah.
But there's going to be play sets of all the places those two fuckers are going to go, right? They're going to do that. No one wants a James Marsden action figure.
I do.
No one that would spend the money wants one, right? So I still think that they're thinking, even if the second movie does markedly lower at basically 2/3 the money that the first movie made, they're going to end up making that money back through just the fact that you are now mainstaying a franchise. You have the merchandise that will exist forever. And obviously, Sega is going to be like, holy shit, we made so much money. Make a third, make a fourth. We don't care if they fail. It's content now.
Man. All right, do you want to kind of just go in now into, like, just any, like, general thoughts you had? Like, was there any, like, scenes? Like, for me, I have a couple, like, scenes that I felt like were either funnier now this third time around, or some scenes that I'm like,
Sure.
oh, this in theaters felt more cohesive, and now, like, watching it a third time with, like I said, less distractions in the comfort of my own home, I'm like, oh, this scene's rough.
Personally, to me, and this can piggyback off of everything that we mentioned earlier about how just small the movie felt, that whole Western bar thing I would have gotten rid of. I think there are ways to do the story element they wanted there of connecting those two characters together, and then, kind of endearing them a little bit to each other through some sort of micro conflict or whatever, right? There's ways to do that. Isn't like a weirdly feeling to me out of place bar scene for a kids movie. You know what I mean? Like, James Marsden drinks a beer in there, which I don't personally care about what happens in my kids' movies. But, like, if you think about what, like, the character of Sonic is, overall, like, that scene just felt like, going back to what I mentioned earlier, we are making a Garfield movie. We are making a Smurfs movie. They're in the real world now type of stuff of, like, I put them in a wacky bar type of a thing. To me, that now, in hindsight, that feels, like, weirdly out of place. And I think they could have taken him to an amusement park or someplace for him to run around, but then there's budget, you know what I mean, involved. Yeah. So
I kind of agree, but also disagree with you. I get, like, you're saying, like, the Smurfs movie, but we know also at the same time kids love that shit. Kids love the Smurf movies and the Garfields and all the those kind of, like you said, an animated creature in a real world thing. Real world place location. So, like, I kind of agree with you that, like, it felt a little bit out of place. But at the same time, I think that for, like, kids, like, they wanted to see Sonic in action, and the only way you could do that is not the only way, but one of the ways you can do that is show him, like, fighting people, and, like, he does that classic going fast thing that they do in all these other movies where everything slows down and he can basically move freely, and so, like, it was a little predictable in a way, but I don't think it was necessarily, like, for me at least, it wasn't, like, terribly out of place. If anything, like one couple scenes I would have cut was, like, the truck ride, like, right before he Robotnik attacks. Like, that whole thing was like,
oh, it was, we need to force a way to make them disagree.
Yeah, disagree, and then also, like, I just didn't like that. Like, I liked the bots going after him, but at the same time, I'm just like, you found, like, some highway in Alberta and, like, quickly shot this, I feel like, and I just feel like it could have been fleshed out more. It just that part kind of, like, dragged on where I'm like, this is going on too long. For something that's supposed to be high action here, it just dragged on too long. And, yeah, like, there's, like, beef between them, but yet not. I don't know. Like, that beef could have happened maybe in the bar instead, in my opinion. Like, if I had to cut a scene, I would have at least cut shorter the whole, like, Eggman's attacking them on the highway, in Alberta, Canada, aka Montana, but whatever.
You bring up an interesting point. It takes a good chunk into the movie for the two characters to be on the same page about what the goal is, right? To fully explain what the fuck Sonic is and what he's doing. It takes them like that scene on the highway. That's geez, that's like more than halfway into the movie. Because
It's
after
like
that,
an
they're in
hour.
San
I think it's
Francisco.
like a good hour in. Because that
That is
movie's
a
an
long...
hour and 40 minutes. I think it's like around an hour in.
I know it's like 40 minutes in is when they're finally on the road to begin with. Then they get to the bar, and then there's that scene with the robots.
So maybe it's like an
right?
hour or 10, maybe.
It's deep in there. So like that is one of those things where like because of that limits what they can do. If they wanted to keep a low budget, that's maybe they did push things out like that. But like at the very instance, it's a very easy situation for Sonic to describe to James Marsden's character Tom, right? Of like, I need that bag of rings so I can go home, and then please help me. Okay, good. But like, it takes a while, and then obviously Tom, as we mentioned, needs to say to Sonic how he's leaving Green Hills or whatever. There's ways if they wanted to make this movie go places and speed things along, they would have had that all before they even got in the truck in the first place. Then they were done,
or like
right?
the very first night that they were driving.
Because that B plot about them disagreeing about what being a local hero to a small town means is like cut short because that happens 2/3 of the way into the movie. Then all of a sudden, now there's a B plot. There's no B
also
plot.
Also, now we're best
there.
friends, but first we weren't, and then like once like you almost or right before you pushed me off a building, we're best friends now, and like I don't know, like I get it. This is more for kids, so like I try to like not be too critical of the plot. Like it doesn't have to be like there doesn't have to be some deep character analysis of James Marsden's character. Like it could just be he's the sheriff in a small town. Cool. There's nothing much more to it. But yeah, I feel like at the very least, one thing while we're an hour and 10 minutes in here, and I feel like it kind of dragged. I will say the beginning, in a way, though, I'll give it a compliment of like it did kind of set the scene. It maybe took a little bit too long. They could have maybe cut it a little bit shorter. But at the same time, I kind of like how they set up the town. And like, here's some of the characters in this town that Sonic has interacted with. Here's Sonic telling you about what he does here, how long he's been here. We're introduced to James's character, that he's a goofy sheriff in the small town, like through Sonic's eyes and also through his own eyes in a way in the beginning. And I kind of like that. If anything, another thing I would probably cut though is you mentioned in the beginning the long claw stuff. That should have been so much. I know it was already short, but they could have actually made that like 1 minute tops. I don't know how long it actually was, but it felt like 5.
Yeah, because it ends into the movie's title pops up on screen, right? So I don't know. I feel like it was short, but like because it just felt so weirdly out of place.
It doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of the movie. It has like this not hyper violent, but just
it's
like
sad.
It's sad.
You know
It's like,
I mean?
your only father or your father figure, your parent figure is killed, but yet Sonic doesn't have any like too much issues with that. I don't know. Like throughout the rest of the film, it doesn't fit with the tone of the rest of the film, which is this like goofy, campy kids adventure right across the western coast of the United States. But yet there's jumping in this like beginning, like you can jump through worlds. It makes it seem like he could do that a lot.
It to me it raises more questions about the like anything than it answers, right? Besides answering the where Sonic came from to the characters that need to know why the fuck he exists at all. Like, what the hell? Like, does he have parents? What is what's the island called? They can't call that. I paid attention to this. He just said the island that I'm from. They can't call it Green Hill Zone. That's clearly Green Hill Zone because you have a Green Hills, Montana that they live in,
which
right?
is fine. It's just like call it something else then. It's just I don't know, or like make it based off a different part of a Sonic game. I don't know, but
and I 100% think that they decided to add this segment after they decided 100%. They were going to reanimate Sonic because they don't talk about the echidnas that attacked him at all. That is clearly just like a visual Easter egg to Sonic fans. Like, oh, I know that they're like the Knuckles people. But besides that, like, what would they do with him? What's his power? You know what I mean? It's very basic that they could have just never shown where he came from until like maybe the very end, and it's like a shocking reveal of a CG world because the whole movie obviously is filmed in real world locations, right? I don't know.
I think for me, like, maybe this will be fleshed out more in Sonic 2. Like you said earlier, you don't think it will. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I think if you wanted to start this movie off, if you wanted to still keep the Long Claw and everything, maybe Long Claw doesn't get killed, but maybe Long Claw's like learns, like, comes home when he's a baby, and it's like, you need to leave as soon as possible or something, and like leaves it more even more vague. And then maybe at the end of the film, the after credit scenes, maybe she sends Tails to go find him. Because, like, once again, why is Tails looking for him? They don't.
I mean, we'll find that out. That was Easter egg teeth.
I know, but like, you could tie that in more, been like, or like even Tails could have came out of the circle and been like, Longclaw said he should be on Earth here, and then my radar says that is the case. Let me go. Like, just something like that. I just feel like, like those two things feel like two separate tones, even though they're from the same world. I'm guessing.
No, I don't. I would assume no. My guess. I mean, think about it. The Green Hill Island, Green Hill Zone that he's from, is meant to be based off of obviously what the visuals in that level was, and we played that level a whole bunch in September, so you know that it's tiki totems, totem poles, and like log rope bridges. You know what I mean? And so like they took that motif and made wooden huts and all that stuff. Tails has a radar built, meant to look like all like his gadgets in the games, right? So to me that suggests they're on two completely different planets. Also, again, more questions. If they can travel to other planets, why the fuck do they have bows and arrows? You know what I mean?
I don't know. But the magic rings are made to seem that they're mystical in some way. I don't know. There's like you said, there's more questions than answers. I think they should have left it either more vague or just have something completely different. Get rid of Longclaw, get all that. Maybe Sonic has the rings from the very beginning from somewhere, and he just happens to wind up on Earth or gets stuck on Earth. That's what I remember when we did an episode on what we guessed the plot was going to be. And I remember one of our guesses was Sonic is stuck on Earth, and James and his wife, the vet, maybe knew someone who might be able to help him, and Eggman was going to be the one who was trying to get to the same world that Sonic was, and Sonic was the key to that world.
That's right.
That's one of our...
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that plot is better than this one, but like that was one idea I know we've talked about, and I think if you didn't have the Longclaw stuff, I think this movie would have been better, but just like more cohesive. I think this movie's still pretty cohesive throughout. Like everything kind of flows generally nicely. There's some slow parts, like I said, like on the highway there, and a couple of the dialogue I think goes on too long. But I think it could have been just a little bit better if, like, I think the first opening just needed to be reworked completely. I think it either needs to be something completely different, or the tone needs to be changed, or make it more vague, where there's less questions. Like you can make it. There's a way to do it where I think it could be more vague, but also less questions are asked.
Right. Exactly.
It showed too much where it was like, okay, there's echidnas on this island. They're bad or looking for Sonic for some reason.
Right.
Does Sonic have this power that no one else has?
There's a difference between the kind of questions you have when something's very vague to very specific questions of like, all right, I don't understand this type of thing. But to piggyback off this, a positive thing I want to say, and this does technically tie into that opening because he starts off as a little baby boy Sonic, you know what I mean? And then it's 10 years later, he's been living in Green Hills for 10 years. One thing that this movie does that, from what I know, my understanding is, none of the Sonic stuff has ever done before, is give like a concrete age to Sonic and make that important. Now, do I think Sonic needs to be defined as a kid, an adult, a teenager, etc.? No. He's a cartoon character. Mickey Mouse can have a job and also go to kindergarten at the same time. I don't care. He's a cartoon character, right? But I feel like they felt that they needed to make Sonic a kid, because obviously children are going to be watching this movie. And I feel like they at least did something with that, where there was a story there and there was character growth in that sense. Having Sonic be a kid not only, connects to the audience for the first time in a way that technically doesn't happen in any of the games or any of the cartoons, and is able to show like a different side to the character than what we've seen in a way that isn't bad. I wouldn't say it's amazing. Again, because I kind of prefer Sonic to be a little bit older. I think he is a little bit of that like stupid, selfish kid type of a selfishness that a little kid, because he's like, I guess 13, right? How old
Yeah.
would Baby Sonic be? And then 10 years later, right? Something like that.
Maybe 15
And showing
tops. Like,
yeah, tops, and he's apparently isolated for 10 years. Like, they're not going to delve into what that would do to a psyche of a child that like can't talk to people for you know what I mean. That's stretching it, but like there was at least something there of like Sonic's purpose is to try to like find a family, so to speak, like actually be wanted. He does things, he helps people, but he actually wants to be wanted. So I think that was a positive thing, I have to say, because I don't want us to and we're not hating on the movie, but I don't want like this part 3 is here are all the things we don't like, you know what I mean?
no,
So
like,
that's one thing I'd like.
I will say one of the things I really liked, and I think a topic I wanted to discuss with you is the comedy, right? I think that was one of the at least selling points for the movie. I remember Jim Carrey. Like I remember we like watched a couple like interviews beforehand, before the movie came out, like a couple months before, and like Jim Carrey said like, oh, there's jokes in here for everyone, right? This is a kids film, a family film, so most of the jokes are gonna probably be more catered to the kids, but there is a couple like weird innuendos that are said throughout the film that I appreciated, and there's a lot of classic Jim Carrey moments in here.
I definitely think he had most of those
Moments.
jokes that I'm like, oh, a kid would not know or why they would think this is funny.
like when he said one of my favorite ones was when he said like, look what came out of my egg sack. I'm like, that's such a weird thing to say, like like in that moment of the film too, like it's like that's like classic Jim Carrey right there.
Yeah. But then at the same time, like it's assumed that you are watching this movie through the lens of a child. What do children think is funny? Having the idea of someone that they know at a lower reading level than them. There was shortly before that is the joke where he says, or the line where he says, "Oh, you're finally reading at a third grade reading level or whatever," and it's like, what adult says that or thinks that that's an insult? Like that's weird, you know what I mean? But like to a kid, that might be funny. Of like, haha.
And I love Jim Carrey. Actually, I liked him a lot in this film. I think he's probably probably my favorite actor in this film. I like James a lot, though. I actually think James Marsden was fun throughout the whole film. But I just like Jim Carrey for the most part, just because I think the scenes when they asked him to be himself, I think he did a good job. The only part that I think I would change, or I think they should have reshot, was the opening scene there where like I like how he came off the truck there, and I thought that was cool. I just didn't like the dialogue with the corporate there, or whatever, general, whatever he was, whatever rank he was, especially the very beginning where he's introducing himself. I just feel like it was a little choppy and just maybe wasn't maybe it was the editing. I don't know if it was necessarily the execution, but I feel like it just should have been either reshot or relooked at. But overall, like most of Jim Carrey's scenes I really liked, and I thought he did a good job of kind of getting that comedy for like the people like us who maybe watched him when we were kids, right? Or the even older than us who grew up watching in the 90s and Liar Liar and Ace Ventura, all those, that he still has that kind of energy, but at the same time he had jokes in there for the kids. Like when he's doing the dancing thing, like I'm just like, okay, whatever, like it's fine, right? But for kids, they might love that shit. You know what I mean? Like they'll think that's hilarious. They, especially in this age of like TikTok and YouTube and the backpack dance and Ninja.
And fan cams of characters, like
yeah. So like, and the fact that like we saw it with Sonic where he did the backpack dance twice in this film, and like while I kind of like might roll my eyes at that, but I'm like, hey, a kid out there will really enjoy that and think like, wow, he's like me, and like
there are kids that legitimately
that's
love
a family movie.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. I will say I appreciated Jim Carrey's acting and performance in this movie more than I did previously.
Really?
And actually, too, you sound surprised.
I not saying like not that surprised. I'm more just saying like, oh, I wouldn't have. I don't know. I feel like you liked Jim Carrey the first time, but I don't think you like loved it. But That's why I'm kind of like, maybe I am a little surprised, but not like flabbergasted. But I'm just like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
I think it is. I think it's easy to take for granted. You know, you have a comedy actor, an actor that he can do serious stuff. He's not always a slack jawed, goofy guy, but that is a slack jawed, goofy guy, and it is in his famous roles and the various famous roles. Everyone's got a different favorite Jim Carrey, movie in that sense. It's easy to take for granted that that can go away. You know what I mean, so to speak. I mean, like, not for nothing, but like Adam Sandler is not a funny actor anymore. Uncut Gems is not a funny movie, so it hits differently.
It has some funny moments, but yeah, it's not a Grown Ups too.
It's not Happy Gilmore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, and it's not, right? It's easy to take for granted that Jim Carrey would just easily be able to do this in a film, but you can see plenty of other, golden age of the 90s comedy movies not being funny anymore at all, to a degree. Like, this is a PG rated kids film, and he was able to lower it down, so to speak, in a way, and it's actually legitimately funny and not like a, trying, like, to me this doesn't feel like, oh yes, he's trying to relive, the Dumb and Dumber days. You know what I mean? Because, like, that kind of never went away. You don't look at it like that. But if Adam Sandler tried again, not for Netflix, but like in the box office where we take movies seriously, I'm doing quotes there, people will be like, oh man, it's harkening back to when he was good. Is he gonna be good? You know what I mean? So,
and honestly, you see that with like Will Ferrell and stuff, where like these not, he wasn't in this, but like the dodgeballs and like all those actors there, right? All these comedy actors of the early 2000s. Like, I feel like that humor's gone.
How many movies is he gonna do with John C. Reilly before we realize that, like, Step Brothers was it? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just assume it's always gonna happen. Anchorman was it. You know who else was an Anchorman? James Marsden. So I want to point out that James Marsden.
Holy shit, you're right. Totally forgot about that.
Watching this movie now, for the third time, 1 year removed, it's no longer like, oh my god, it's the Cyclops guy. What else was he in? Seeing this again, I'm like, he is a very charismatic and good actor. And like, yeah, like, this role is supposed to be a serious role character, but with a big sense of humor and just goes with it, right? And he's the good straight man to the funny man, if Sonic and Tom were that couple, which I don't think that's necessarily the comedy duo that they're trying to do. Excuse me. I don't necessarily think that's the comedy duo that they're trying to do, but like, seeing him, I legitimately thought of like, why haven't I seen him in more stuff? Now, do I watch every movie? No. Do I seek out movies that I've never heard about? Absolutely not. Should I see more movies? Yes. He's been in a bunch of movies since Sonic. He's been in TV shows since Sonic. He has in stuff that's coming out soon, and all throughout this and during the X-Men stuff, he was in a whole bunch of stuff. But I want to give a shout out to him that even though he is still known as the Cyclops guy who had that last role 7 years ago,
or maybe
Days
the
of Future Past
guy, because like a lot of people who watch Westworld know him for that. So like, yeah, he's been in these like pop culture roles, and not saying this isn't any different, but like, yeah, I will agree with you. I mean, when I first saw, I thought he was the best actor. I think it's changed now for me for Jim Carrey because, like, of the reasons you said, I think you put it much better words than me. Where I just think he did a really good job of making it for everybody, and he went back to his classic days without it being like a reliving of the glory days kind of thing. And yeah, I think James was perfect for this role, and I hope it sounds like he'll be in the second movie, and I hope he is, because I think he is needed for the film to succeed. I'll actually say this. I think pretty much all the actors I liked. There was like no one in there where I was like, this actor didn't fit, or like this, maybe like the character maybe, but like none of the actors I felt like were like out of place. Like no one, everyone I think delivered well. There was no like I said, there was a couple lines like with Jim Carrey and that general guy who I think maybe could have been a little bit better, but like that's really nitpicky. Like there's movies we've watched where we're like, dude, this actor sucks in this film. Like we watched Spirits Within. Final Fantasy, and like there's some great actors in that, and they did terrible.
Yep.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Like I know the plot wasn't good, maybe the lines weren't great either, but they didn't even like. It sounded like they just went.
They phoned it in.
They went in and were just like, yeah, here's the lines.
Besides maybe Ming-Na, but again, she is used to doing animated things, and like maybe she just. But yeah, I don't think that excused it either. I bet she would have been even better if those, the circumstances were right. But you're right. I mean, there's very few characters. Like, yeah, Crazy Carl technically counts as a character. Wade, the deputy, technically counts as a character. Those would be side characters. But since there's no side characters,
yeah,
you know what I mean? They are the side characters. The sister. In law of Tom and his niece, they are side characters, but they're barely in it. Agent Stone is the only side character. Do you consider Maddie a side character? Because then it's just her and Stone.
I think so, because she's at the tail end.
She's not in the movie the whole bunch.
She's not in the movie much, but she was there in the beginning and at the end. She wasn't there much in the middle, unfortunately. I actually think she should have gotten more lines because I think she was good. And I liked her. I want to know. I think her character was like the cool, collected one. And I wish we got a little bit more of that, considering this. All the other characters are kind of a little bit chaotic at moments. I know James is supposed to be a little bit more cool-headed, but even he has moments where he's like, I don't know what's going on, or like I'm trying to like almost panicking, right? Maybe he acts better when he's panicking. His character, not like his acting, but his character. Does better when he's panicking, but like she was like pretty much collected the whole time, and they even make a joke about that, right? When she's like, "Can you just give me props for how like level-headed I am considering the situation?" And like that just shows like, yeah, she's supposed to be like the level-headed one, and I thought she was good, but yeah, all the actors I think were good, and
it's just very few of them, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it just feels how quaint when you're like, who was in the movie, and it's two dudes and a voice, a woman, and a guy that's a punching bag for Jim Carrey. Besides that, there's no one else, right? There obviously is the funny sister-in-law, you know what I mean? She's just there because it's funny to have the idea, especially for children, of like, woman that just wants her sister to divorce her husband. Like, in real life, like, you wouldn't do that. It'd be like, all right, I'm not talking to you anymore.
Not to the level of what she was doing. Maybe you would mention, be like, look, I don't like your husband, but like the way she kept doing every like line she had somehow tied into like, your husband sucks and you should leave him. Like,
and even before that, like if that character is introduced when Maddie and Tom are talking on the phone, as knowing that's her character trait. Her character trait is, I hate your husband. You know what I mean?
I love it. And that's
which
another,
is
once again,
all it
going back
needs
to
to
the
be.
family comedy. Once again, like that's classic family stuff. How many times has like parents, divorced or not, have had that like conversation with maybe their significant other, their wife's father or whatnot, who made a joke about that, or an argument where like, I might just divorce you, like that definitely happens. You know what I mean? So like I feel like once again, that's good comedy to have for when for a family movie like this. So yeah, the comedy's good, acting's good. What was the other thing? How do we feel about, this is briefly about the comedy. Like, how do we feel about like the product placement? Are we okay with that?
It's whatever.
You think it's whatever? Because I remember it, and like once I watched it, like once it was happening again, I'm like, damn, that's really on the nose, huh? Like some moments where I'm like, but I was looking up apartments on Zillow. Love it. I don't know if I hate it or love it. Where it's like,
I think the fact that it goes by so quick, for all of them, but the Olive Garden 2 bits, because those are actually funny moments. You know what I mean? Because
when you're here, your family, like that was hilarious.
Right. That's a funny moment. Yeah. And then obviously the fact that the Secretary of Defense or whatever is giving you a $50 gift card to Olive Garden as a reward, right? Besides that, that's funny. That is product placement used. That's funny. There's the forgettable stuff like Zillow that's clearly just paid and put in there, and they don't have a reason to make it funny. I do want to point out, besides the fact besides the fact that Sonic made a reference to being Vin Diesel.
Yes.
In the bar, the woman, and when all the darts are being thrown, she's got a tray full of Coronas. I just want to point that out.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah,
That
but that's one of
so
those things
quick
where it's
that,
like
every time I try to look for like details like that, it happens so quick, so I don't even get a
right,
chance.
and that makes me wonder: is that a product placement or not? Because if you were,
I don't remember it, so no.
If you were, you would be like, no, and he needs to be obviously hung on there for a frame. And I was trying to look for more product placement when Sonic is in his cave, his actual cave, and he's like, look at all, I'm having all bunch of fun time. Look, I'm playing, ping pong, I'm reading books or whatever. Obviously the Flash, but like that's not product placement. I'm sure they didn't even ask DC. You know what I mean? Maybe just like a courtesy of like, hey, our fast character is going to read your comic book. I was looking when he's playing ping pong with himself. Instead of a net, he's using a line of empty soda cans, and it's shot and lit in such a way that you just can't really read the labels. I'm like, oh yeah. But if Coca-Cola or Pepsi did it, it would have been like Pepsi and then, Dr. Pepper and all the ones down the line, right? So, Mountain Dew. I'm actually surprised there was no Mountain Dew sponsorship. Or like, not sponsorship, but
no Game Fuel.
Yeah, exactly. Sonic. I'm surprised Sonic didn't drink an energy drink. Legitimately,
that's a classic bit right there. Fast character. I don't know if it's a classic bit, but like, kid drinks energy drink, you go fast, you crazy.
We saw.
Now, what would Sonic do? Would he burn it out in 1 second? Yeah, that's a good.
That might be an ethics concern of like, do we want to get kids to think that they're cool for drinking extremely sugary, bad for them at that age drinks? I do want to point out, we watched for the Chronicles of Diesel. The Iron Giant, and there's a scene where that kid drinks an espresso and is on caffeine, and it is that same kind of thing.
Shut up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Directed by Brad Bird.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. Anything else about this movie to add? Like, I feel like we talked about anything specific this time that we didn't mention last time. I think we could easily go scene by scene if we wanted to, and talk about it. Maybe we will one day. Maybe we'll do that next year. Who knows?
I would like to watch.
Is there anything big now?
At some point, I want to watch like a director's commentary, and then like we were talk about that and like maybe the fun stuff. Because I've only for the first time ever I watched a director's commentary, and I did it with Krampus because every Christmas Eve we watch Krampus, and we've seen it so many times that I'm like, you know what? Let's watch the director's commentary version because I'm just curious, and like I learned so much more about like each scene and stuff like that. I thought it was interesting. So there might be a lot more cool Sonic nuggets that we don't even know about that maybe the directors and writers would share in the commentary. So
I heard the Lord of the Rings ones with Peter Jackson are really good, but I haven't seen them.
Oh my god! And that's 3.5 hours a piece.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it. In any case, I think we're good to wrap up this unless you have anything else you want to add.
So far, I guess I'd say it's aged well. Hopefully, it continues that way. Maybe 10 years from now, when all the other get better video game movies, and Sonic Movie 2 is great, and maybe we'll be like, oh, this movie's trash in 10 years. But
as of today, the only thing we have about the Sonic movie sequel is simply that title logo thing. So I would be interested. Let's date this episode right now, because I'm going to throw it out there. We're probably going to do something like this 1 year from today for the second anniversary. Maybe not a rewatch. Who knows what we'll do. But I'd like to date this because by then we'll have had a trailer or 3 for Sonic 2. As of right now, we don't. I want to ask you this right now. How do you feel after Sonic 2 happens? Because I want to have a little bit of a dating for this. Place your mind in the future after Sonic 2. How quaint, how small, and how quote-unquote insignificant will this movie feel in comparison to the second one? How do you think we're going to look back on this movie after the second one comes out?
How we're going to look back overall? I think, like I said, I think it's a good video game movie, and I think we're at the start, hopefully, of like a golden era of video game movies. It needs one. So I think we're gonna look back at the way, like how we look like at Avengers films to an Iron Man. I know we keep comparing it to that, but like that is one of the biggest phenomenons we've had
Easy comparison to make.
Easy comparison to make. Iron Man's great. Iron Man 2 is all right, and Iron Man 3 is all right, right? And then Avengers are like, to me, like those are the blockbusters. Like those are the ones I'm really gonna remember. I'm gonna remember some moments from Iron Man, but I'm gonna remember when it was Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Hawkeye, and all them, right? Really, when it comes down to it, 10, 15, 20 years from now, when I tell my kids, be like, yeah, there was the Avengers on film. Like, that's what I'm going to tell my kids about. I'm not going to be like, oh, there's Iron Man on film. So, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, maybe in the future we'll get a mashup of all these video game characters in a movie, too, or something. So, it's kind of hard to tell.
Super Smash Brothers.
But for a Sonic sequel, I feel like it doesn't need to be... I don't know if it'll be necessarily, like, drastically different. I feel like it'll be like, okay, I'm hoping it's another solid film that's a little bit better, a little bit more expanded, and I hope that this movie, I think this movie will still be fun. I think it's still a movie that, like, if I ever have kids, I would throw on I'm babysitting or something, be like, hey, let's watch Sonic, and I will still enjoy my time. And I think Sonic 2 should do the same thing. So I don't think it will. So either like I said, I think it's gonna be more of like an Iron Man situation where, like, you might just look back at it fondly. You might not remember every detail of it, but it's something you might have on TV here and there. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to be easy to remember the details because it's going to feel to me that barely anything happened in this movie. So it's going to be like, oh yeah, they run away, they go to a bar, they run away, they go to San Francisco, they end up back home, the end. I think we'll look back on this movie as like, oh, that's cute. Like a very quaint, like, oh, look, they were trying their thing there. Because I have a feeling that you're right, that we will get a boom of, like, a whole bunch of video game movies, just like how, you know, as you were mentioning, people have gotten more and more used to being, like, to accepting the weirdness of superhero movies, of comic book characters, and not needing to know why things are happening because they happened in a book. I think that will happen with video games more and more, where people will just accept, yeah, we don't need to make a really weird Assassin's Creed movie. We can make a super crazy Assassin's Creed movie, and people will go with it. They don't need to be grounded by some weird
video game they never played. Yeah,
exactly, right. People will just go with that stuff
because there are people who will be upset. Fuck them.
Right, and they'll have a chance to get that in the future when there's a 50th reboot of that movie, right? I think we will look back at Sonic just like how we're talking about how we're just starting to get going with these video game movies. I don't think that this movie is the formula because of it is the animated character in the real world setting. I have a feeling that that's not going to be something you'll see in the majority, I would even 95% of video game movies going forward. I don't think you'll see this approach. And I think we'll go back, especially after Sonic 2, which I'm betting is a CG blur fest of zany locations for a good chunk. I think we'll look back at this and be like, oh, that's very cute and quaint. What's the budget? It was like $30 million because they shot it all on Earth. Like, I think that's kind of how we'll be looking at it. But I'm excited to talk about this movie 1 year in the future. But I am more excited about the fact that this next year we're going back to our roots and doing more Sonic movie watch, Sonic movie news stuff. Like, we're, you know, the tagline to this show is Sonic news, movie news, and Sonic movie news. And for a year, we haven't done that. And now we are. It's almost feel like we're coming home. So I'm going to wrap this up. This has been episode 72 of the Sonic Movie Show, a show that you can find on a variety of podcast services like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audible app if you're an Amazon fan, as well as YouTube. Check out our other podcast stuff on there. All those video game movies we mentioned earlier, we reviewed them. We might be doing one next week. Who knows? Who knows?
The future,
we might be jumping back only a few years. Be written
one day.
Exactly. Check all those stuff out. We mentioned Vin Diesel. We do a Vin Diesel podcast, The Chronicles of Diesel, on this very feed. We just did a video game and a cartoon. And next month we're doing essentially a bad comedy, potentially.
Or the best comedy we've ever seen. Who knows?
Or a very forgettable one. Check out those things. Also, go ahead and let us know, because I actually am curious to know what people think about this movie 1 year removed. Tweet us on Twitter, at Sonic Movie Show. That's the official account. Let us know your thoughts about this movie if you've seen it recently. Especially if you're like us, that only saw it in theaters and then that's it, right? Until now. Let us know what your thoughts are.
And if you did watch it like multiple times throughout like the last year, I'm assuming you're still enjoying it if you're still watching it, but I'd also like to hear your thoughts too. Like, I feel like even the best movies, if you keep watching over and over again, eventually you'll get sick of it, or maybe you'll start having critiques just because you've seen it too many times. So I'm just curious what you all would have to say if you've watched it a billion times.
Yep. So tweet at the show, follow the show at Sonic Movie Show, and give us a shout out on Twitter. I'm at Ethan Absolutely, and Devin is at CURSONA YouTube. And we will see you next week for a somewhat recent video game movie, potentially.
Potentially.
So that's the last word of the show, is potentially.
Sonic.